You ever get to Thursday evening and, feel like you've been running a marathon,
Oh, absolutely.
but you haven't actually moved from your desk chair. You're just completely exhausted. Your brain feels like static.
Right, just total brain fog.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet there's this lingering nagging guilt that you should probably be doing a side hustle or, I don't know, optimizing your LinkedIn profile.
Or at least feeling a little more passionate about the spreadsheet you just stared at for 8 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
That exact feeling, which is frankly wild when you think about it.
It is. But it's actually the defining symptom of the modern professional condition. We have fundamentally blurred the line between our intrinsic human value and what we do to generate a paycheck.
Which makes any downtime feel terrible.
Exactly. When your identity is entirely wrapped up in your output, any moment of non-productivity feels like a moral failure.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that exhaustion, that immense pressure to treat your career as your absolute reason for existing is exactly what we are tackling today. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
We've been looking through an incredibly fascinating stack of research, articles, and notes centered on a very specific premise. The source material is basically a guide titled Work is Work, but Your Life is Yours.
It's a really refreshing take.
It really is. And our mission for this deep dive is to extract a practical, guilt-free survival guide for you, the modern professional.
A roadmap for surviving the corporate world.
Right. We are going to figure out how you can actually thrive by, paradoxically, caring just a little bit less.
Which requires a pretty profound paradigm shift, right from the start.
How so?
Well, the material we're analyzing today actively dismantles that dominant find your passion narrative. It strips away all the romance of the corporate grind.
So no more dreaming of labor, basically.
Exactly. It frames a job as exactly what it is for the vast majority of people on Earth, an economic tool. You use it to pay bills, maybe secure some health care, and find a baseline sense of structure.
But it's not your soul's purpose.
No, it is absolutely not supposed to be the core of your existence.
And I think the very first step required, before we can get into any of the practical advice from the book, is giving yourself permission to be imperfect.
Which is so hard for high achievers.
Oh, totally. We have to challenge this myth of the perfect employee, the one,
Well, we all know the one.
the person who responds to Slack messages within 3 minutes, who volunteers for the weekend task force.
The one who jiggles their mouse at 9 p.m. just to make sure their little status icon stays green.
Yes, the green dot of anxiety.
That green dot is actually a perfect example of manufactured insecurity.
Wait, manufactured?
Yeah, the system is intentionally designed to make you feel inadequate. There is no finish line in modern knowledge work. The goalposts are always moving.
Because companies always want more.
Right. They demand infinite growth, which means they fundamentally require you to feel like you are never doing enough.
Wow. That's bleak, but it makes so much sense.
But when you understand the economics behind that anxiety, that the system literally profits from your overcommitment, you can finally step back from it.
Because it's a rigged game.
Exactly. And the truth is, everyone you work with is struggling with this. Even the people who look like they have it flawlessly together in the Monday morning all-hands meeting.
Right, the author uses this great analogy. We really need to stop comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel.
It's so true.
But look, let me push back a bit on behalf of anyone listening right now who feels their blood pressure rising at the thought of stepping back.
Sure, let's hear it.
If I'm at a lean startup or a highly competitive firm and I just stop answering emails at 8 p.m., or I stop volunteering to lead the extra committees, don't I just look like a massive slacker?
That's the fear, yeah.
Like, what if setting those healthy boundaries practically guarantees that I get fired? How does this survive contact with reality?
That is the most common fear. And what's fascinating here is how we need to surgically separate the concept of obsession from competence.
Okay, separate obsession from competence.
Right. Setting a boundary does not make you incompetent. You can be exceptionally skilled, highly focused, and incredibly valuable to your team between the hours of 9 and 5 without being consumed by the company.
Without making it your whole personality.
Exactly. The notes suggest thinking of your labor like a utility you provide.
Like electricity.
Yeah, like the electric company. They give you power, and you pay them for it. The electric company doesn't constantly email you asking if you feel deeply passionate about the grid,
That is such a funny image.
or asking if you'd be willing to supply an extra surge of voltage on Sunday for free.
Right, because you're a team player.
Exactly. They deliver a service, they bill for it, and that's the boundary. you can be an excellent provider of your professional utility without sacrificing your nervous system to a company.
A company that would, frankly, post your job opening before your obituary was published.
That is the harsh but necessary reality.
That is the cold water to the face we all need. Treating your labor like a utility bill. I love that.
Yeah.
You are allowed to be human, you are allowed to have a bad day, and you are still a valuable professional.
Precisely.
So, with that permission to drop the obsession established, let's look at the actual physical reality of the daily grind. And it starts with the absolute hardest part for a huge percentage of people.
Waking up.
Waking up in the morning. Chapter 1 stuff.
It's incredible how much moral weight society puts on waking up early.
Oh, it's a whole industry, the 5 a.m. club and all that.
Right. If you hit the snooze button, you're supposedly lazy. But the research absolutely validates that chronotypes are real, hardwired biological reality.
Chronotypes. Break that down for us.
So a chronotype is essentially your body's natural inclination to sleep at a certain time. It's dictated by your circadian rhythm and when your brain naturally releases melatonin.
So it's not just a preference.
Not at all. If your internal clock runs on a delayed phase, forcing yourself up at 5:30 a.m. isn't building character, it's literally fighting your own endocrinology.
Exactly. It is biology, not a moral failing.
Yes.
So if mornings are agonizing for you, you aren't lacking willpower. To cope with a world that heavily favors early birds, the strategies suggest heavy, deliberate preparation the night before.
Right, to reduce cognitive load in the morning.
Make the decisions when your brain is actually awake. Pick out the clothes, prep the coffee,
Oh.
and use the commute intentionally.
But there is a really sharp diagnostic tool we found in these notes.
Oh, right, about dread.
Yeah. If your mornings consistently suck and you've tried all the optimization routines and you're getting enough sleep,
Then what?
the problem might not be the morning. The biological dread you feel in your stomach might be data telling you that the job waiting for you is the actual problem.
Wow. A crucial distinction. Are you tired or are you filled with dread?
Exactly. And once you actually arrive at that job or log into it, we enter the realm of Chapter 2, Workplace Welfare.
Oh boy, the ping pong tables.
We have to draw a brutally hard line between superficial corporate perks and genuine structural well-being. A ping pong table in the break room is not welfare.
Or a subscription to a meditation app.
Exactly. Not welfare.
Oh, and don't forget the dreaded Pizza Friday, functioning as a Band-Aid for a 60-hour work week. It's like trying to fix a shattered windshield with a piece of Scotch tape.
That's the perfect analogy. Real welfare is actual, uninterrupted, paid time off. And crucially, PTO that leadership actively models taking.
Because if the boss never takes a day off, nobody else feels safe doing it.
Right. Real welfare is predictable, reasonable hours. It's psychological safety, meaning you can admit a mistake without fear of retaliation.
And the book makes a really strong point about sick days, too.
Yes, mental health days need to be viewed as legitimate sick days. You do not need to be physically running a fever to be unwell.
Right. Like if your stress levels are spiking your cortisol to the point where you can't focus, you are sick.
You have to set and enforce those boundaries. Because a corporation, by its very nature as a profit-seeking entity, is never going to proactively enforce them for you.
Never. Okay, so moving into chapters 3 and 4, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The transition from your own personal welfare into the messy reality of office politics.
Ah, office politics.
I have always viewed office politics as this purely toxic, Machiavellian game. Something to just put my head down and avoid at all costs. Like, isn't office politics always just a toxic distraction? I just want to do my work.
Many people hold that exact view, but the author argues that refusing to acknowledge office politics is like refusing to acknowledge gravity because you don't like falling down.
Okay, that's a good point.
The sources we're examining reframe office politics completely. Politics is simply the study of power dynamics and the navigation of human relationships. It is not inherently evil, it is just the weather system of the office.
And you really need to know if it's raining before you walk outside. It's about learning the real organizational chart, not just the official paper one HR give you.
Right, the informal networks.
Who actually has the social influence? Who are the bottlenecks? Who does the boss actually listen to when doors are closed?
And navigating those dynamics requires emotional intelligence. For example, using the CC line on an email isn't just administrative, it's highly strategic.
Oh, the CC line is a weapon. Or a shield, rather.
A shield, exactly. It's documentation. When you CC a manager on a block project, you are actively shifting liability. You are communicating, this is the state of play, and I have made it visible.
Cover your assets, right? CYA.
Precisely. It protects your capacity and your reputation.
But part of that daily navigation is also the emotional toll of the people you sit next to or, jump on video calls with every single day.
Interpersonal exhaustion.
Yeah. There is a deeply comforting concept in our notes that completely relieves the pressure of networking. The idea that not all of your colleagues need to be your friends.
This is huge.
In fact, most of them should just be what the book calls friendly neutrals.
Friendly neutrals is a wildly protective concept because it counters the evolutionary psychology that tells us we need to be deeply bonded with the people around us to survive.
Which corporations totally hijack?
Oh, 100%. They hijack that tribal instinct by calling themselves a family.
The corporate family. Red flag.
Massive red flag. It often leads to blurred boundaries and exploited labor, but recognizing someone as a friendly neutral lowers the expectation.
So you don't have to be their therapist.
Right. You can be polite, collaborative, and professional without needing to invest your finite emotional energy into their personal lives. It empowers you to set boundaries with oversharing colleagues, kindly but firmly. Shared struggle builds genuine connections, sure, but not everyone is your best friend.
So true. Okay, so we've survived the morning biology, we've navigated the friendly neutrals, and we've strategically CC'd the right people.
The morning gauntlet is complete.
Now this deep dive needs to zoom out to the higher stakes issues. Chapter 6 stuff. We need to talk about protecting your absolute capacity, your peace of mind, and frankly, your wallet. Let's start with stress and managing a crushing workload.
The foundational error most professionals make here is equating productivity with activity. They are not the same thing.
Just because you're typing fast doesn't mean you're doing something important.
Exactly. You have to distinguish between a temporary crunch, like a 2-week sprint to launch a product, and an unsustainable chronic workload that never actually dips.
Which is most jobs these days.
Unfortunately, yes. To manage the latter, you need a mechanism to filter the noise. The text suggests the Eisenhower matrix is highly effective here.
Okay, break that down for us. I've heard the name, but how does that matrix actually work in practice?
It forces you to ruthlessly categorize tasks across 2 axes, urgency and importance.
Urgency and importance.
Urgent tasks demand immediate attention, like a ringing phone or a frantic Slack message asking for a file. But they rarely move the needle on your actual goals.
Right, they're just loud.
Very loud. Important tasks, on the other hand, contribute to long-term success, like designing a new system architecture. But they rarely have a screaming deadline today.
So what's the trap?
The trap of the modern workplace is spending 90% of your day reacting to the urgent, which is usually someone else's emergency, and completely neglecting the important.
Wow. And when you inevitably hit that wall where the sheer volume of tasks is physically impossible, I love the specific script our sources recommend.
The capacity script.
Yes.
Right.
You never go to your boss and say, I can't handle this. You say, I am at capacity. That phrasing is a total game changer.
It really is.
Because saying I can't handle it sounds like a personal, emotional failing. Like you just aren't tough enough. But saying I am at capacity is an objective, mathematical reality. It is so empowering.
It removes the emotion and focuses on the physics of the workload. Think of your time and attention like a computer's RAM.
Okay, I like this.
You have a finite amount of operational memory. You cannot simply download more RAM through sheer willpower.
No matter how much coffee you drink.
Exactly. Saying I am at capacity forces management to prioritize. If they want you to take on Project C, they have to explicitly tell you to drop Project A or B. You make the invisible trade-offs visible to them.
And managing that capacity gracefully is a superpower that should absolutely pay well. Which brings us to Chapter 5, the money.
The uncomfortable conversation for so many.
But the data is incredibly blunt here. Talking about your salary, negotiating for more, is not greedy. It is simply recognizing the market value of the utility you provide.
Yet so many people approach it emotionally, feeling like they're asking for a personal favor. You must approach negotiation logically. Build a documented case.
So no walking in and saying, I feel like I deserve more.
Never say I feel. Walk in with specific market data for your role in your region, paired with a documented list of the tangible value you've added over the last year. Ask for a specific number.
But what happens when the company just says, no, it's not in the budget right now?
Then you do not apologize and retreat. You ask them exactly what metrics need to be hit and what timeline is required to reach that number. You force them to provide a roadmap.
put it back on them.
Exactly. And if they refuse or move the goalposts again, you have vital information about your future there. Crucial note here, standard. Annual raises of 3% rarely beat real-world inflation.
So you're basically taking a pay cut every year you stay.
Essentially, yes. If you want a significant bump in your market worth, the structural reality of the modern economy is that changing jobs typically yields much larger increases than remaining perpetually loyal to one company.
Which naturally leads us to chapters 7 and 8, and the big question, deciding when to actually walk away. The Great Resignation taught us a lot, but how do you know if it's time to pull the ripcord?
By heavily filtering your emotional desire to escape through logical decision-making, you must differentiate between a bad day, a bad project, and a fundamentally bad job.
Right. Have you just had a rough Tuesday? Or is the culture toxic?
Precisely. And logistically, do you have an emergency fund? Have you researched the market, or are you just suffering from the grass is greener syndrome?
And obviously you want to leave professionally.
Always. Sometimes staying is temporarily strategic if you are still extracting valuable skills or network connections from the role.
And speaking of setting the terms of your work, we have to look at the remote work revolution. Because for millions of people, the office isn't a building downtown anymore. It's their kitchen table.
And that brings entirely new structural problems. It's certainly not the flawless utopia it was pitched as.
Definitely not.
Yes, there is incredible flexibility in the elimination of the commute, but the cons are severe. Primarily, the total erosion of physical boundaries and profound isolation.
The boundary erosion is so insidious. When your laptop is open on the kitchen island, you're never really at work, but you're never really at home either.
Right, the liminal space.
Yeah, you're existing in this weird liminal space where you feel guilty making dinner because you could be answering emails.
That guilt is by design.
The absolute necessity of physical and temporal boundaries cannot be overstated. You have to create friction. Shut the laptop, put it inside a drawer, and physically walk away.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. And you have to intentionally combat the isolation because organic water cooler connection doesn't happen through a screen.
Yeah.
You have to actively schedule virtual coffees or work from a library once a week just to remember what human beings look like.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the remote setups, the salary data, the capacity matrices, it all ties into Chapter 9. Your career, your rules.
Right.
You must define success on your own terms, not society's defaults. You are building a career philosophy that fits inside your life, rather than trying to squeeze your life into the exhausted margins of your career.
Because you're a whole person. Which brings us to a concept in our research that honestly stopped me in my tracks.
The resilience part.
Yes, it changes the way you look at corporate culture entirely.
Yeah.
It's about how the modern workplace weaponizes the concept resilience.
It is arguably the most vital systemic critique we can make today. We are constantly bombarded with messaging from HR departments and leadership to be resilient.
Bounce back, stay agile.
Right. To stay tough in the face of massive corporate restructuring, layoffs, or doubled workloads.
But realizing that this constant demand for resilience is actually a massive red flag. Man, that reframes my entire last decade of work.
It's a heavy realization.
We've been taught that if we burn out, we just weren't resilient enough. We lacked grit. But realizing the system is unreasonable, not us, that's a huge weight lifted.
This raises an important question. When does building personal strength become a convenient excuse for institutional abuse?
Wow. Say that again?
When does personal strength mask institutional abuse? If you are a nurse or a teacher or a developer in a system that requires you to constantly, endlessly be resilient just to survive the week, that is not a healthy environment.
Just a broken system.
It is a broken, under-resourced system offloading its operational failures onto your individual nervous system. Yes, develop the capacity to handle difficulty. But you must recognize when you are being told to toughen up to mask a situation that management refuses to fix.
Sometimes the answer isn't, I need to do more yoga and drink more green juice so I can handle this 80-hour week.
No, definitely not.
Sometimes the answer is simply, this job is fundamentally broken.
Yeah.
And tied directly to that realization is how we view rest. This was so radical to me. Rest is not a reward for productivity.
We treat it like a prize, like a little treat we get to have if and only if we clear our inbox to zero.
But it's not.
No, rest is a non-negotiable biological requirement for cellular survival. You're not a machine. Stop treating yourself like one.
Explain the mechanism there, because I think we just view rest as doing nothing, when biologically it's highly active, right?
Absolutely. When you rest, your parasympathetic nervous system engages, dropping your heart rate and allowing digestion and immune function to proceed.
So you're physically healing.
Yes. And neurologically, sleep is when the glymphatic system literally flushes toxic byproducts out of your brain tissue. It's when your brain consolidates all the learning and stimuli from the day into memory. It's when you process complex, heavy emotions.
That is incredible.
Rest isn't the trophy you get at the end of the race. It is the structural integrity of the bridge you are driving on.
Viewing rest as a baseline human need rather than a vacation you have to earn after a 60-hour week. That alone completely changes how you experience a Sunday afternoon. Sitting on the couch doing absolutely nothing without guilt is productive in its own biological way.
It is essential maintenance.
Okay, so we have covered a massive amount of conceptual ground here. From the endocrinology of chronotypes to the Eisenhower matrix to the illusion of the perfect employee and the toxic weaponization of resilience.
It's a lot to take in.
And taking all of this in at once is incredibly overwhelming. If you listening right now try to implement all of these boundaries and matrices tomorrow morning, what actually happens?
You will experience a severe cognitive overload, leading to what is often called burning out from trying not to burn out.
Oh, the irony.
The ambition to perfectly balance your life, to set every boundary flawlessly, becomes yet another stressful project on your to-do list. When faced with massive systemic changes, the human brain often defaults to executive dysfunction. We just freeze.
So what does this all mean? How do you actually use this without freezing? Our sources offer a very specific anti-overwhelm action plan called the Rule of One.
Pick one thing.
You just pick one thing.
Exactly. It's about breaking the paralysis of choice by lowering the friction to start. You do not try to become a completely new boundary-setting superhero overnight.
Start small.
Really small. If mornings are your biggest biological struggle, you don't overhaul your entire life and diet. You pick one tiny evening prep habit, maybe just setting out your laptop and clothes, and you start only there.
And if you realize you are deeply underpaid, you don't march into the boss's office tomorrow with zero data and demand a raise.
No, please don't do that.
You pick one action. You open a blank document on your desktop today, call it your wins document, and just start tracking your accomplishments. You do that for a month, and then you formulate the conversation.
If you are drowning in a chronic workload, your one single thing is to practice saying, I'm at capacity just one time this week.
Make the invisible workload visible just once.
Right. If the job is irreparably toxic and demanding endless resilience, your one action is simply updating the top half of your resume today.
And if you're feeling that crushing remote work isolation we talked about, you just send one message to schedule one virtual coffee chat.
It explains perfectly why massive New Year's resolutions always fail.
Right, because we demand instant, total transformation. But doing one small action is infinitely better than knowing everything and doing absolutely nothing. Small, singular choices generate compounding interest over time to build the career and the life you actually want.
Because your career really is just an accumulation of thousands of micro decisions. Each small boundary set, each no delivered gracefully, each hour of genuinely guilt-free rest, these are the actual building blocks of a sustainable human life.
Now, to be exceptionally clear, we are not living in a fantasy world. We have to acknowledge the very real, heavy constraints you face. Money is real. Debt is real.
Responsibilities to your family are real.
You can't just manifest away your mortgage or your absolute need for health insurance. We don't all have unlimited options to just dramatically quit and go live off-grid in the woods.
No, we definitely don't. But the profound takeaway from all of this research is that within those very real economic constraints, you possess far more agency than you likely realize.
You have leverage.
You have the power to logically advocate for yourself, to protect your mental peace, and to negotiate the value of your utility within the parameters of your reality. Work life doesn't have to be a flawless utopia. It will always involve friction and hard days, but it absolutely does not have to be soul-crushing.
You get to decide what is acceptable to you. At the end of the day, work is just work. The spreadsheets will eventually be deleted, the company will eventually be sold or folded, but your life, your mind, your nervous system, that is yours.
It is a fundamentally simple truth, but a radically disruptive one when actually applied to your day.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle all the way back to that Thursday evening feeling of exhaustion we started with.
The marathon at the desk.
Exactly. We've talked about the biology of mornings, how to draw physical boundaries, and why we have to stop treating rest like a conditional prize. But I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on as you go about the rest of your day.
Let's hear it.
If rest is no longer a reward you have to earn, and your core identity is no longer tethered to whatever job title is currently in your email signature, who are you when the laptop actually closes? What does your highlight reel look like when work is completely removed from the frame?
That is the ultimate essential question to answer for yourself.
Take your time figuring it out. Remember, you don't have to fix everything today. You just have to make the next right choice for you. Pick your one thing this week. Protect your peace. Make it a good one. Talk soon.